And it's also like especially offensive to me because it's like Lilith refused to lay under Adam. Why the hell would she lay under Lucifer?
That's my,
you know, like that is quite literally the opposite of everything that is Lilith. I agree. I think that would have been incredible. I wouldn't be surprised if someone calls you up and be like, please write for this show, because that would have been much better.
Please.
So your magic.
Hey Cove, what's up? I'm Brooklyn, and today on Coven Convo, our topic is witches react to the chilling adventures of Sabrina. I was gonna just say Sabrina, but anyway, joining us today we have...
Hi, I'm Cece. I am a Pisces sun, a Scorpio moon, and a Leo rising. And I'm an artist in Atlanta. I also write and design the cover for an LGBTQ magazine called Grimm. It is a semi-academic periodical about horror and kind of dark fiction. And I'm also on a horror movie podcast called Bloody Good Horror.
I'm VVitchMama. I am so happy and so blessed to be here today. Happy solstice to everybody. Happy Litha to everyone. I have a little bit of a head cold, so if I sound kind of crazy, that's why. So I am I guess we do this every time, but I'm an Aquarius sun, Sagittarian moon, also Leo rising. So chilling adventures of Sabrina. I know we have lots of thoughts and feelings.
Yes.
We definitely need to dive into.
Yeah.
Where do we start? Oh, God. Where do we start?
There are so many things to start with.
Yes.
We can start with free will. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, we can
that's a
free
big
will.
one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm along for the ride, so wherever we go.
Free will.
Okay. I kind of felt like watching it, it was made to kind of look like she was going to have a choice to choose, and essentially she did. And you kind of felt like there was a little bit of pushback from Sabrina where she was like, something with her dark baptism where she was basically like, well, why would I want to even serve the Dark Lord, someone that is basically like not really giving me much of an option. And then also we should say spoiler alerts are going to happen. You should know that. Like, we're talking about this.
Right.
But in the end, it almost seems like there was never really a choice. It was like, okay, fine. You choose not to go through with this, and you lose everything you love, like your powers, and you'll watch, like you were bringing up last night, you'll watch your friends die and you'll grow old and you won't get to live long. Or on the flip side, but then it's like,
you still watch your friends die. Like,
and you still watch your friends die.
Your mortal friends
but you get
die.
your powers.
True.
Yeah.
But you get your powers, but you're kind of like subservient to the Dark Lord forever. It kind of reminds me, like I was telling y'all, like of the issue I kind of had with like Christianity growing up, where it was like either be subservient and serve, and then you can live eternity like being subservient and serving forever, or burn in hell. It's your choice though. You totally have a choice. It's like, is there a choice? So, and I feel like we haven't seen also the end of the Dark Lord. I think the way it ended was just like a little band-aid.
Oh, for sure. I mean,
I don't think we've seen the end of him.
I think so. I kind of had forgotten what happened. I know that Sabrina puts the Dark Lord in the puzzle box, right? But he breaks I was like, where does he end up? He ends up in her boyfriend's body.
Yeah.
Yes, in hell.
Good times,
right? Yes. So yeah, I'm kind of with you. Like, I really was hoping that, with Sabrina, you get this character who her entire personality is based on kind of rebelling against the status quo, and she's constantly trying to change things, not only at her academy, the Academy of Unseen Arts, but also her mortal school, and it was really trying to be this like progressive person. But when we see her at her dark baptism, or even after her dark baptism, she's really this quintessential pawn for everybody else who has power in the show. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like I realized that it may just be a stepping stone to like get us to really, you know, for her to wake up and realize like what's happening. But I was kind of hoping that would have happened sooner and led to different plot points. Yeah. And we're still kind of there.
Yeah. I think also it's like a huge reminder of like just our own existence in the show. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, like, you know, we have astrology, we have things that seem like they're really set in stone. Like, do we have free will? You know, is everything kind of set, is the past set before us, and we're just kind of choosing what our ancestors or what spirits have, you know, have set forth or pushing us or whispering in our ear? Or do we truly have free will? You know, at the end of the day, no matter whether, you know, it's something that's seen as, you know, the Dark Lord or the false god, it both seems like there is no choice, you know? And I think, if anything, it's a deep question for all of us. Yeah. You know?
For sure. The whole topic itself is like a whole other ballgame.
Yeah. We went into some like interesting corners last night in our meeting. It was like, okay.
Well, and, you know, I guess that's what I'm kind of hoping, that like that's such a large obstacle to handle, even within 2 seasons of, you know, I think like 9 or 10 episodes apiece. So like I realize there needs to be some ground set for us to really get in there. I think that, you know, I realize I'm not really the target audience, that it's definitely more of a young adult show, but I mean, like, everyone can enjoy it. I still enjoy it, but I think that, you know, the melodrama probably needs to take front seat a little more than, okay, well, let's handle this like free will situation right off the bat. So I have to remind myself sometimes. I'm like, why? Like, oh wait, well, maybe we'll get there.
Yeah. Yeah, and also too, like, I know we talked a lot about the audience being kind of targeted towards young people, but honestly, I think it's towards us, because yeah, we've seen with like Toy Story is a great example, where we've seen nostalgia is something that we humans love more than anything, right? And we can always like compare and contrast, and probably watched Sabrina the Teenage Witch when we were young. And it was so lighthearted and fun, and it's something that we want to relive. And as adults, it's interesting because it definitely has more deep thoughts, deep ideas. And speaking of that, like, we definitely have to talk about the feminist aspect of Sabrina. We know in previous episodes we've talked about how just being called a witch is part of the feminist movement right now in 2019. That some people just consider the word witch being an empowered woman. But is Sabrina the type of feminist that we need? Is she playing the white savior complex? Or can we appreciate, you know, the fact that it's a show and it's lighthearted, and there are parts of it that are really cool and radical, and some that really need to be checked?
Yeah. I like tinker on between those two, because a part of me is like, Brooklyn is just a show, you know, like, it's not that serious, and maybe there's that character development that's going to happen. Like, you know, in the first season with all the patriarchal bullshit that was going on, I almost was like, if this is going to be like how covens are painted, like, as a whole, and I know back then that was, I'm assuming, probably something that happened during that time, but now I just feel like it's important to, you have a, like, one of the writers is a witch. Right. So it's like you have a platform now to kind of set a narrative. But then, you know, so I was thinking like that was going to be how things were, like, in the, like, I thought it wasn't going to change, and it was going to always be patriarchal and blah, blah, blah. So I say that to say we find out that Sabrina starts trying to fight and combat that and push back on that. So in regards to the white savior thing, in the same way, I realized, like, okay, that's just probably part of the storyline. Maybe right now Sabrina is just like doing the best she can with her character and what she's been like faced with, and maybe it'll start to change, and it won't seem so much like a white savior thing, because it does seem sometimes like she and again, I know this is a show, but we're analyzing it. We're here.
Yeah, for sure, we're here for that.
Yeah, but it did seem like she, like we talked about last night, like she was only really coming back to her friends and stuff, or like even Roz when she's like I was rewatching the episode last night where they help Harvey's brother, and it backfires, and she's like, "Oh, Roz, what was your cunning? We could use that to help." Yeah, and it always seemed like she just kind of comes back around when she needs help, and it's so. Well, but that might just be her character developing and learning to not be so fucking selfish.
I think I'm with you. Like, I really hope that that's kind of where the show goes, because, and I mean, season 2 really. I mean, it's set up to have Sabrina mirror the Christian Christ and like the Nazarene miracles. So like they really were harping on the fact that she was like a savior. So
literally.
Yes, literally. Yeah. So I'm hoping that like
I love these points. It's a good point.
Yeah, I'm hoping that that's why, because like I did too. Like by the time I got to like episode 8, I was like I can't watch this anymore. Like,
wait, what season?
Of season 2. Okay. Yeah, because it's just I think episode 8 is where she like restores Roz's sight, because Roz loses her sight because her the women in her family are cursed, and Miss Wardwell kind of like gives Sabrina this idea or suggestion to give Roz her regular sight back. She's always still had the cunning, but when that happened, I was just like, if this just continues, like it's going to be hard for me to stay entertained. And then once we really got to like the end, I was like, okay, well maybe I'm just reading it wrong. Like maybe she is a teenager. Like you are allowed to be selfish at some point. And I mean, you should stay selfish to an extent. But I'm hoping that it's really just kind of mirroring the pawn, or the position she is as a pawn right now in like the grand scheme of things, and that season 3 will kind of take a,
because her friends do help at the end with the sigils and stuff. So I think you're right. I think it's gonna start to like they're gonna become part, and I really cannot wait. Like you brought this up, so I'm not gonna take credit for it, but I can't wait to see like what Roz's cunning turns into. I really think, like you said, that should be expounded upon.
Well, and I mean, she in season 2, like when they're working on the sigils, she touches the gates of hell and she kind of like sees all of them, and Harvey's like, okay, well, explain them to me, and she's like, that's really difficult. So she has him see it through her cunning by touching him, and I think that that's a really like, I'm hoping that that's going to be something that they use later on, because that's a really awesome, exploration of her gift.
Yeah.
So.
And you see in season 1, when she comes out to her friends as a witch, there's a little bit of a weird pushback. Oh, for sure. Like, and I think all of us can have experienced that. So that's something you can truly empathize with. And there's this moment where where Sabrina's talking to Ambrose, and she's like, yeah, I'm just kind of giving them space because I can tell they're kind of like freaked out. And he's like, maybe you should do the opposite. Like maybe you should like be around kind of like everything's business as usual. And she's like, kind of, you can tell she's kind of two wandsing it. She's like, what do I do? And I think all of us have kind of experienced that as witches, that, you when you come out of the broom closet, that there is definite pushback from people you didn't even realize there would be.
Oh, yeah.
You're
like, where'd you come from?
Yeah. Also, like, where did this prejudice come from? Yeah. And really, it's really about them and their own uncomfortableness with, in my opinion, themselves, and their own faith and whatever it is that they're practicing. But we can't talk about, Sabrina without talking about Lilith.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Ambrose. I was like, are we getting there yet?
Yeah, I know. We're all like getting all hot and bothered waiting for the Ambrose section.
Yes, let's talk about Lilith too. I love Lilith as much. Yeah.
I'm talking about Lilith. So all of us, I would like to think, are, attached to Lilith in our own ways. Not just obviously the TV character, but her archetype, her goddess self. And when we find out that Lilith is who she is, Mrs. Wardwell, you know, there are a lot of feelings that come up.
For sure.
Absolutely. I want to kind of have Brooklyn here. I don't want to like keep going too much. So, you know, we know the, you know, mother of demons, birther of demons, seductress, all of those stereotypical things that we're hearing about when it comes to witches in the first place. But how do we feel about Lilith in the show?
Like, do you want to go first? Or?
I'll sum it up in one word.
Okay.
One word. Whoa.
I should have worked on mine.
Ready? Meh.
Aww.
Yeah. I will say I was really excited when we find out that Miss Wardwell is possessed by Lilith, and I was like, I mean, the like religion nerd in me, it was like, oh my gosh, like we're gonna like get all of this backstory, or we're gonna get like, you know, like all this influence and kind of, you know, how I don't know, I thought that her plot point would be a lot different. And I realized that I don't know, I mean, I think that they did her a huge disservice in how they handled her character.
Once again.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes me so frustrated, because to have writers on the show, which like, I mean, I'm not bashing anyone's writing or anything, but like, I just thought that, and I mean, you know, I realize not everyone has those feelings, but like, I just thought we would see a different side of the story, because it seems like that's the very like puritanical view of Lilith, and I was hoping we would get kind of a different take on her character. And
Or maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah, even a little bit of both, which like maybe we'll get to that in season 3, because obviously Sabrina wants to save her boyfriend from hell. So, you know, I'm sure that's something. Yeah, not the last that we'll see of Miss Wardwell or Lilith, but I really think, which like this might be skipping ahead, so I'm sorry, but I was really hoping, especially when we find out that Sabrina is the herald of hell, that like, you know, all these things are happening because she's bringing upon the apocalypse. When we find out her true parentage, like I was really wanting it to be, like I wanted it to be connected to Lilith. And I thought that was like, that would have been a really great way to handle it, because I mean, when we find out that her dad is Lucifer, it's kind of lackluster. And you know, there's still, for them to have set up such a great relationship between her and Miss Wardwell as Miss Wardwell, and then her and Lilith as like this kind of like mentor, and then we just kind of see Lilith still thrown aside as a handmaiden. I was like, no, it could have been so different. So
yeah, when I say meh, I mean like I had really high hopes in the beginning and was like, oh, this could, like you said, be cool. And then just the way her story unfolded was just kind of like, oh.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, it's not that it was bad, but it was just like, oh, just okay,
a little bit.
It's the same story that we hear over and over. But and it's also like especially offensive to me, because it's like Lilith refused to lay under Adam. Why the hell would she lay under Lucifer?
That's my,
you know, like that is quite literally the opposite of everything that is Lilith. And it's like, you know, I agree. I think that would have been incredible. I wouldn't be surprised if someone calls you up and be like, please write for this show, because that would have been much better.
Please.
Much, much better. It would have been. You know, you see this nurturing side of her. You see the mentor side of her. You really do get attached to her. And, you know, the fact that she, like, quivers in the Dark Lord's presence is like, what the fuck is this shit?
It's not just when, like, when he shows up and he's, like, mad. It's literally, like, he just shows up
and all of a sudden
she's, like...
She's like a puppy with her tail tucked
under.
And it, like, I wanted to fast forward through scenes to be like, I can't listen to her, like... You know, and the actress who I should have looked up her name, like, I think she does a phenomenal job. And I'm like, she just seems so underutilized in those scenes, because, like, there should be so much, like, contention between them, or maybe not contention, but, like, a strange, like, maybe even like sexual rapport where there's a lot of like, you know,
between Lilith and Sabrina.
Well, yeah, sure. I was meaning Lilith and the Dark Lord.
Okay, got it.
Sorry,
got it.
Sorry. Is Sabrina like 16?
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Whoops. Well, I don't think she actually is in real life though, right?
No, I think she's like early 20s.
Yeah.
Maybe 21.
Harvey's like what, 30?
Yeah, Harvey's a lot older.
It's fine.
Really?
I don't think
He
he's
looks
that.
like he's 16.
I don't think he's.
sure.
I don't think he looks like he's 16.
I think he
he's
looks
30.
older. I think also because I saw him play Jeffrey
look it
Dahmer
up.
in that movie. That like I can only see him as Jeffrey Dahmer now, and I'm like, oh,
He's cute though. I don't mean
Yeah.
it. I don't mean that as shade. But...
No. He's
Yeah.
super cute. He's
see.
super cute.
he's just one of those.
Ambrose is cuter.
Oh my god. Are we going there? I'm
Yes.
ready.
Yes. Can we talk about Ambrose?
If you can't tell, guys, we all love Ambrose.
Ambrose is. I
So
really
delicious.
yes, and I really you made a really great point, which like I hadn't thought about when you said he was basically taking the place of Salem, and I loved that like kind of interpretation of it because he does such a great job of being like the support system for Sabrina while still being like this great character who has a whole side of him that like we haven't really gotten to see yet. Like
I can't wait.
yeah, like him trying to blow up the Vatican and you know, his relationship with Luke, his relationship with Prudence. Like I am really excited to see that develop.
Yeah,
Me too.
Prudence and him. I'm excited
Yeah.
to see where that goes when they go off to go
Right.
fight some.
Although the
angels.
end scene was a little like, it was a little too like
It was a little corny.
Hansel and Gretel
Yeah.
ish for me, but I was like, okay,
I'm like, you know, I'm here for it, bitch.
right.
All right.
You know
Let's
what?
go for
Like
it.
if this is what it takes, I will accept it. So yeah.
Yeah. That's,
I mean, if we're gonna talk about Harvey, we gotta talk about Nick. Like, is he just like? I don't know. I'm underwhelmed. Like he has that pretty boy look, but I kind
Right.
of feel like I'm watching the Disney Channel when I see him. You know what I mean? Like he kind of looks like a Disney Channel like hot guy.
Yeah.
Am I crazy?
No,
Come on.
I
You know
he is
it's-
pretty
you know
though.
it's-
he's
Yeah,
very,
but
very
so
attractive.
is everybody on the Disney Channel.
That's true.
I
true.
wonder if it's because maybe I'm giving too much I don't know, giving too much credit to it, but like when we find out, huge spoiler alert, that that Nick is really doing a lot of the Dark Lord's bidding, I'm hoping that like a lot of his like, because when you see him with the Weird Sisters, like he's a lot more laid back, and I don't know if that's because they're much more open in their sexuality and they're more like kind of comfortable in themselves in general, that he seems more comfortable dealing with their characters, whereas with Sabrina, like, you know, Sabrina is still like it's brought up multiple times that she's still a virgin and that you know, she's kind of trying to handle coming into herself and accepting her true powers. So maybe it's just him as an actor trying to react to that that he sees, because like there's something like really stiff about him as a character with Sabrina versus
Maybe he's
everybody
like in
else.
her in real life.
Maybe.
That would be kind of fun. Aw. Yeah. I mean, also a point that you brought up, you know, about the virginity thing. So as far as I know, so when you become you have to consummate your like relationship with the Dark Lord, and that either didn't. I mean, it didn't happen.
Yeah,
but that's also like a point that they make that they kind of like sprinkle in there and they just like let it go. And
Yeah.
you're like wait. That's like body autonomy. That's like, this is like some deep stuff talking about like when we were talking about free will. And it's like, okay, so my body, not just my soul belongs to the Dark Lord, but my body as well.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's just something that's so potent especially in, you know, the conversations that we're having about anti-choice in, oh my God, Georgia, Alabama, wherever else, Ohio, you know, where, you know, we're really, really fighting out here. To kind of touch on that and make that a part of it is a little disturbing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I really I really feel like it had to have been a very obvious choice to like sprinkle that in and then not not kind of mention it or return to it. Although when we see Zelda get married to Father Blackwood, the Dark Lord shows up basically to claim her as his own first, and
which is like expected.
Which
like
is
if
expected,
you're like
yeah.
in the space, if you're a part of it, like it's just like he can come at any time and
Right.
be like, yeah. And you're like cool with that?
Well, I was gonna say she was very like, and it was strange. Like I thought that was a really, like I wish that there had been more back and forth between Hilda and Zelda, because Hilda, tends to have more of a like mortal view on things than, not necessarily her witch family, but like, she can see both sides a lot easier. And she kind of mentions something about like, oh, well, like, aren't you kind of like nervous? Like, are you sure that you want the Dark Lord to show up? And, and Zelda's very adamant about like, oh, it's a great honor. It's very, it's what we all want. But then that's literally the only conversation they have. And then when we see him show up, Zelda's pretty terrified, or it plays very much that she's terrified. Yeah. And it's a weird, I don't know, it's a weird switch that happened for me. And I was like, well, I kind of need...
I would like to know more. Like, please elaborate.
Yeah, like what's
what's going on?
Can we break this down first?
I think that, that speaks volumes, though.
Sure.
It speaks volumes to oppression and power and rape, like the idea that like, oh, to be with a man who treats me really well and blah, 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 doesn't mean that you have to have sex with him, and the idea that someone who's really powerful or like a boss or like a celebrity, like also like in the moment you could be terrified and you can still say no, but in her situation, it's like she can't say no.
Right. Yeah.
And like, I think that's a feeling that a lot of women feel, and it's a point that they brought up, but kind of they brought it up and then they just like let it go. Yeah.
It kind of also, I think, is a good reflection of what we see with indoctrination and how it can really like sway how something like someone else would look at and be like, what the fuck, that is not okay. But yet you're like, the people that are in that cult are so in it, are like, well, it's just the way these things are, and but you can see the terror in her eyes, almost as if like she's either really, really nervous and happy the Dark Lord's coming, or she's really nervous and also like, fuck, this is actually happening now, and I'm not like really all the way into it. And I think it's a really good testament to how we see people like compromise because they're indoctrinated. And
so true. Yeah, that is
weird.
Such a good point.
Yeah. And I think that I think Sabrina's virginity and like just her sexuality in general, like I appreciate that, she and Harvey, I think I think they were making out pretty regularly in like season 1, and then we get to season 2 and we have our Ambrose orgy scene where the Weird Sisters and her future boyfriend Nick are all with Ambrose, and she like walks in on them in their in her house, and Nick like comes to her later and kind of like talks to her about it. And I appreciate that once their relationship starts, there's a lot of talk about sex, but there's never any, not necessarily even any pressure, but it's like there's no like when they get to Lupercalia and they're supposed to like lie together and kind of do this ritual together, Nick is very much like, if you don't want to do any of it, like, let's go do this, like, let's do that. And even when she's like, okay, well, I kind of think I want to, like, it's still a very obvious, like, we can only go where you want to go. And it's something that happens between the two of them rather than just, one person taking that control.
For sure. And that was really refreshing.
Oh, definitely.
For sure.
Yeah. Because I was really worried. I was like, if she wants to accept her sexuality, hell yeah. But I was like, please don't get to the witch school and then all of a sudden be like, all of this is okay now. Because you know, she says multiple times, and she even goes and talks to Roz like, okay, well, I'm thinking of having sex with my boyfriend. And Roz is like, that's great, but like, are you ready? And I appreciate that we see that conversation, because those conversations don't happen enough in entertainment for us to like, for it to translate, I guess, in everyday kind of life.
Yeah, and I was glad it happened too, because, and I'm sure we'll touch more on this a little bit, but like, this is still like, in a way, while I understand it's entertainment and it's Hollywood, another facet of it is like how people are gonna perceive witches to be in our path and what we do. And so to hear like that conversation finally happen was like, thank you. Yeah. Because I don't want everyone, I think most people with like common sense would know like this is a TV show. Sure. But it was good like for that to be sprinkled in there.
Common sense is not common.
No.
Yeah, that's true. You would think.
And speaking of like portrayal of witches, we definitely need to talk about the entire Satanistic aspect of the show. It's not a mystery. It is not sprinkled. It is in there. It is all up in there. So hopefully everyone that's watching or listening has watched the show and isn't just like, whoa. But yeah, I mean, Lucifer is the Dark Lord. The idea in this show, witches are followers of Lucifer, which we definitely want to say, you know, is wonderful and incredible, and we support that. But it's not all witches. It's not all witches. Also, like how people who do practice Satanism or follow Lucifer may feel with this kind of misinterpretation of what they do.
Yeah. I try to research, because the thing with the whole like, so like the Satanic Temple and there are Luciferian witches, there's like there's like so many sects, so we should probably like, I'll preface what I'm gonna say by saying that, and we definitely, like you said, support like any witches that is their path. I think where some of the frustration can kind of lie is like that it's yet again another example where witchcraft and Satanism is being convoluted and like kind of painted with a broad brush. But I also understand it would be really boring show to watch with like just us like making tinctures and stuff. But also the writer that is a witch, on one of the writers on the show, I was watching or listening to a podcast with him. He did on the Modern Witch, and I recommend everyone, I'll put it in the description, listen to it, because he was asked about the backlash he got from the Satanic Temple using the iconography, and he was saying that a lot of what they did was to kind of actually play off of the puritanical view of witches, and also to kind of poke fun at Christians or fundamentalist conservative Christians and their view of like how it is. And so it would be entertaining. And he was saying, he was like, I find that most witches that maybe aren't as informed are the first to get overly offended by it, whereas the ones that seem to be actually more informed on more about the path and the left-hand path and all that don't really take it too much to heart. And I did find that to be kind of a good point, because it's like, you're not wrong. Like,
well, I mean, you know, I think that's a really good point, because it's kind of like police procedural shows or like Grey's Anatomy. Like, I mean, I hope that not all the nurses in the hospital.
Sabrina.
Right. Well, I mean, I just hope that they're not, you know, not more worried about their love life than saving lives, you know. So I understand that, like, yeah, you've got to take the liberty to entertain somebody and to, you know, give us this drama or this, you know, tension between the two. So it's not that it bothered me. I think I was just, and I mean, I didn't read the comics, so I know that I don't have really any room to talk about like the source material, but I was thinking that like, because it's based more in like a horror type genre, that we would get kind of a different take on it maybe. And you know, I mean, the reason that the puritanical views of Satanism or witchcraft in general are still around is because, or are being used, is because it's still around. So I understand that that's still an obstacle and something that's, you know, a point of tension. So to see it kind of in a more satirical way, and, you know, we even see the Church of Night kind of symbolize this more like gothy teenage version of the Catholic Church is, I mean, it's kind of funny. So I can appreciate that.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, guys. Keep talking.
One thing that I wanted to bring up with that is I really appreciated, I believe it's season 1, episode 5, the Batty Bat episode. Which is like chock full of so much great symbolism and just fun in general.
Which I feel bad for Patty Bat. It was not a pretty Patty Bat. I was like, look, there's a lot of really good makeup, makeup effects, but
yeah, it was
that
rough.
One was rough.
Their demons are pretty rough, guys. Yeah, special effects, step it up. But yeah, I mean, I think one thing that I really appreciated from that episode was the beginning of Zelda's dream, and she's essentially having story time with some children, and she is telling the creation story, and essentially the way that she summarizes it is that, you know, Adam and Eve were in the garden, and Eve wanted to partake in the fruit of knowledge. And the false god said that if they did, they would die. And when she ate it, they didn't die, which, you know, Zelda says was a deception, and that the Dark Lord came as a snake and essentially gave them knowledge. It didn't allow them to be ignorant and naked any longer in the garden, you know, and I thought that was really interesting. We do see a lot of things like that in the show that I really align more with like a Satanist view of what Lucifer's role is if they see Lucifer as like a true being instead of just a metaphor.
Which I think from what I read, but there are quite a few, at least Satanists. I can't speak too much to Luciferian witches because I don't know enough about that, but that they don't really look at Satan as like literal. It's more metaphorical. Yeah. And I'm sure there are some that do, you know, there's always those offshoots. Oh yeah, but for sure. In general it seemed to be a common kind of theme that most didn't really like think he was like, they more like the metaphor of his story. And in earlier, I was listening to a podcast with the Satanist who was talking about how and I think I took notes on it. But I want to also say I strongly recommend people like do research on that, because like how I feel like often I feel being a witch where it's like there's so much misrepresentation and misinformation. The same goes for like the Satanic Church and all that. So I recommend everyone go do some reading.
Well,
before you
everybody
start
should be reading.
Like, please,
all the time. Like.
Yeah, but he was, I'm trying to find it. Basically, he was just saying that, like, in the original manuscripts, Lucifer it literally was, like, light bringer, light bearer. And it wasn't, like, till, like, later on with, where kind of, like, the people in the church and started convoluting Satan and Lucifer and kind of forcing them together. And it kind of, another way where the church likes to take things that had a good intention and ruin
it. and the fact that Lucifer is just an ugly like white dude. Like, really? Come on. It's just like in The Witch. It's just like in The Witch where you're like, is this Puss in Boots right now? Is that Puss in Boots? Like, is that who that is? Is that who they casted for Lucifer? Please, come on.
Yeah, I think we talked about that too last night. His, like, reveal was like,
that was also very underwhelming. And, you know, I don't know, like,
I want to see him in goat form every time.
Yeah.
First of all.
I'm like, well, and like, I kind of
goat form, please.
Yeah, goat form all time.
Yeah, the whole time.
Yeah.
And you know, I appreciated that even though we had to see Lilith as his handmaiden multiple times, it did kind of give way to like, you know, explaining his physical form and how like he starts kind of transforming into this beast. And I'm like, why didn't we just like lean into that a little more? Or, you know, also like, why wasn't that kind of, I mean, it goes back to like bodily autonomy and like how like, well, he expressed his free will, so like in turn he's losing bodily autonomy or vice versa. Like I think there was a lot of things that could have gone hand in hand with that, but yeah, we get a very like straightforward, just
pretty charmed version of what
right?
Lucifer would look like.
But he wasn't even that attractive. I'm like, look, if you're gonna give me that, like,
make him the goat, man.
Yeah, just keep it the goat.
I like that. I mean, I know they have to probably pay like a puppeteer. Okay. Probably every.
Well, how much do they have to pay the actor though? I'm like, get rid of the actor and keep the puppeteer.
Yeah, keep the puppeteer. We 3 votes for puppeteer.
Yeah.
The power of 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just kind of like a little underwhelming, and I know that I've been meaning to look more into this, like the specifics of the Satanic Temple, like suing. Did you like? What
I
was
meant to
that
read about it some more. So I know that it's a pretty close. Both statues are a pretty close, like, approximation.
Which is of Baphomet.
Yeah, of Baphomet. And I can't remember if the Satanic Temple is like, so working in the art world, you're only supposed to have like a 10% difference technically for intellectual property, but because it's copyrighted.
10% though. How do you like measure 10% in the art world?
Well, and also if
this
intellectual
like
property
is like that.
Yeah.
10%?
Well, yeah, it's like, but this is the thing. Like, if you can pay to argue it, you normally win. Like, you know, the originator usually wins. It's literally that 10% because it's supposed to like, you know, kind of set up like who can fight it and who can't.
Got it.
Obviously, the Satanic Temple can fight it, and they did. I know that they settled, but I think that the statues look pretty similar, except that the Church of Knights has the children at the bottom. I think that was added, and then there's like, I mean, minimal detail, like maybe in his like jewelry or something he's wearing. But I mean, like his form and his like hand symbols or gestures are pretty close, I think.
Yeah, I remember that too. I believe that they settled and they kept the statue, and I think the original may have children actually.
Okay, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know, but
yeah, I'm not sure.
I know I've seen them before.
Okay, so maybe
before,
so maybe the kids are wearing different clothes. I don't know, like 10%.
10%. That's all that matters.
Good to know.
Yeah,
duly noted.
Yeah,
it's a little frustrating of a situation, but yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. It's interesting to me, like kind of the pushback that the show got, and then the settlement, and still, you know, I mean, not that I fault them, you know, I mean, whatever works for anybody, but I am interested in that whole situation. Yeah. So.
Real world stuff.
Yeah. What do you think?
Oh, just about Satan, or
well, like, just like the portrayal of.
I mean, I think
like, do we think it was pretty accurate to it, or do we think there were some?
I mean, I think that one thing that I'm excited for is that the left-hand path is normalized.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that, you know, there's always bittersweet aspects to each one of these points that we brought up, you know, like, but it's also, it is exhausted. It is exhausted that witches are followers of Satan. And I think another huge part of it is this constant idea that witches want to have sex with the devil, which people in their mind see as the patriarch.
Yeah.
And it's like this continuance of witches or women are evil. Mm-hmm. They're seductresses. They just want to manipulate you. Mm-hmm. And that just exemplifies with the word witch.
Oh, for sure.
You know, you have woman, and that's already something that's like taught in the church. Mm-hmm. You know, that's why it's like women shouldn't wear like tank tops and stuff, because they're the ones seducing men. or like, short shorts or whatever. It's like, it's never the responsibility of the man. And it's this continuance of this idea that women and witches are whores.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of, and I think
I love whores, by the way. I just want to say,
I love
whores. We support whores. But this idea of it as a negative aspect of like, women, just wanting to manipulate,
Yeah, that was something that that I did think was kind of cool, is to see some more normalizing of like sexual liberation. I would like to see, and I think that's where the storyline is starting to go, is the combating the whole like male like dominated coven kind of mentality. And I think we're seeing like obviously that being brought down. But it's weird because a lot of like when you were talking about like how a lot of the times the purity, the modesty, like you were saying, gets put on the woman. It kind of reminded me of like the church I used to go to, where they were having like an event. It was, I don't know if I want to say it, that might be rude. It was an all women's event, and I was asked to sing at it. I would have been like, I don't know, probably was my senior year of high school. But anyway, I had just done a photo shoot wearing like a fucking leotard, mind you. It was on my Facebook. It wasn't like put on their conference website or anything. And I had the preacher take me out for lunch and basically tell me that if I didn't take those photos down, I couldn't perform. So I took them down and I performed. And looking back on that, it's like, first of all, that's really creepy. That an old, like he was probably like, I don't know, 60, 70 at the time, is having lunch with an 18, 17-year-old, however old I was, telling me like, that shoot you did, there are some people in the church that are concerned about this, and I just can't let you perform unless you take that down. And I was just like, and I remember like my heart just like, so it,
shame.
Yeah, just shame. So it makes me happy to see a show where it's like, that's the shame is kind of like pushed off. Like,
and that's the thing about witchcraft, though. Yeah. That's the wonderful world of witchcraft, is like this, like shame and guilt just like being lifted from you. Absolutely. Like it's a great thing that they portray in the show. I love that.
And with witchcraft, it's like, because I think that's another thing that is cool too. If you want to dress quote unquote modestly, dress modestly. If you want to wear like next to nothing, wear next to nothing. No one is going to judge you because it's your body, your choice. Yeah, period.
100%.
And I think that you make an excellent point, because for as kind of underwhelmed as we were with Lilith's character, and in the end of, at least just with season 2, she is kind of portrayed as a trickster, as, someone who's going to manipulate you into doing, the Dark Lord's bidding. Throughout the rest of the season, she dresses extremely modestly. She is still very reserved and very, in control. She seems very uptight, to put it, kind of succinctly. But just because she's that way, like, she's still hooking up with multiple people. She's still doing whatever she wants. She's still very much in control of her path and what she wants to do. And I appreciated that, that was a character choice to juxtapose against, a more liberated, sexuality that we see in the Church of the Night, in the Church of Night. There we go. I know. It sounds like an 80s song.
Phil Collins song.
But I mean, I would listen to it.
I'll listen to it right now in my head. It's good.
Oh God. Oh, the 80s. So yeah, I appreciate that. Even though I didn't feel fulfilled with her character, I do appreciate that. Because I think in the beginning we see Lilith as her younger self, like who was more of a beautiful maiden, and she's very, kind of not necessarily sexualized in real terms, but it definitely in like entertainment terms, you know, she's very supple and very beautiful and young.
Supple.
Yeah, I know, right?
I like that word.
Yeah.
But then, you know, she takes Miss Wardwell. It's a very like, it's a good sex operator voice though. I love it.
Kind of gross.
But you know, when Lilith takes a form in Greendale, she chooses like a crone type of character,
Which
and
I love.
Yeah, and I love it. Yeah,
100%.
because it's not even just the like the sexy librarian trope. Like she is very much like, you know, in control, ready to like do what she wants.
Virgo.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah, I'm like, yes, more crone representation.
Yes.
I love
Amen.
Zelda
Yeah.
and Hilda.
Oh my-
Like,
both of
oh
them.
my God,
Yes.
we need that so
Yes.
much more. Please,
Yeah.
we want that.
Yes.
Create that.
And did Roz's grandmother, did she pass away?
I feel like she did.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
She's later
yeah.
on. She
Yeah.
because that was cool too to see
Yeah.
a black representation
Right.
of a crone with
Yeah.
like a wise woman, and also to see it being passed down.
Right.
to-
And yeah, she wasn't a trope. She was very much a flushed out character.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I'm hoping we see more of Roz's family or more of her kind of you know, like we see Theo's great
Or
well,
their dad, excuse me.
yeah, their dad's like sister or somebody or like great aunt. So we see like kind of Theo's background, and I really want to see more of like how Roz's family was cursed by witches and like
Yeah.
what that looks like, you know, as a maker familiar unit. There we
Yeah.
go. Couldn't say the word I was trying to think.
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
I loved, speaking of Theo, that
Oh,
it was
so
amazing.
Yes.
And I just want to say, I was looking up some reviews of I came across this one YouTube channel where this woman was saying that because she was saying she's a witch, which I think is something that needs to be brought up in our community, where she was like, I didn't like this whole third wave intersectionality feminism part about the show, and I was like,
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean that's fucked up shit. Don't get me wrong, but like there are fucking bad apples everywhere.
Yeah.
girl.
there are, but that's my point, is like it's something that I was really, really, really happy to see,
Oh, for
because I think
sure.
we need that representation, and I loved the fact that Theo's character, like, we get to see that happen, because that's very much representation that needs to happen. But I guess I know there's bad apples, but I was just like so surprised that was a thing.
Don't be surprised. Do not be surprised. There are black gay Republicans. Don't be surprised. Like sometimes I'll have conversations with people. Do not for a second think that because someone has like a label of LGBT, QQI or anything, or lesbian witch or whatever, like people have prejudices and they have issues.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
I mean, I can
protect your
understand.
magic. Protect your magic. Guard your heart.
I can understand sometimes maybe like it feels like Hollywood can just be like trying to shove stuff down your throat for a profit. But I think in this scenario it was important.
Oh yeah, and I thought it was handled I mean, you know, from an outsider's point of view, like I thought that it was handled very gracefully too, you know, like there was even a moment where Harvey and Roz are having this conversation, and Harvey kind of like presents a question of like, well, so I can't think of Theo's name. Oh, Susie. You know, so Susie, and Roz is like, no, Theo. And he's like, okay, well, and she's like, no, it's Theo. And he's like, oh.
That's like explaining stuff to white cis men.
Yeah, like, I know, right? Like,
yes.
nope.
This is it. It changed.
That's it.
There you go.
That's it.
It's not that hard.
I can't
Sorry.
do it. No, but to his credit, he's like, you know,
But
he does.
yeah.
He takes a minute and he's like, okay. And
That's
then,
all you get, Harvey.
Yeah, that's
Just
all
a
you
minute.
get. Yeah.
After
but,
that's $100 an hour.
But it was cool to see that. It's like, look,
Yeah, for sure.
he got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it was a conversation that, you know, didn't feel exploitive at all. And it didn't need to go into like any more explanation. Like, because first of all, it's not Roz's conversation to have.
Yeah.
But it was also like, I see where you're at, but like,
Here's
here.
where you need to be.
and we're good. Yeah. So I thought that was, it was handled in a way that didn't feel like Hollywood was trying to like.
It felt like a real conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
That you would have, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wanted to talk just briefly about one of my favorite episodes, which is the winter solstice episode.
Oh, yes.
They actually put out like, it was like maybe a couple months after it had been done. It was during Christmas time, which is a time of year that I absolutely loathe with every fiber of my being. So it was nice to have a beacon of light. Literally, during winter, especially European witchcraft, creating a giant fire that lasted days, nights and days, was so vital to survival. Mm-hmm. And we have that episode essentially where they light the Yule log and they want it to continue, and Sabrina tries to have a seance with her mother and the Weird Sisters, and I just really appreciate the Gryla storyline. Mm-hmm. I love that Freya is brought up multiple times. There are other different goddesses, like when they try to do the exorcism of Theo's uncle, things like that, that I really appreciate. I hope that when people watch, they feel inclined to research and read and be like, oh, that name, I've never heard that name before. Mm-hmm. Like, I need to know more about that. Like, one of the things I looked up was the demon that had taken over Theo's uncle was Apophis. And I was like, okay, I don't know that much about that demon. I need to like research it. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing I really, really love about the show.
We had to take a quick little potty break, but we're back. Okay.
I think to piggyback on what you were saying, that, there's kind of some mixed feelings about how the show borrows from a lot of different cultures and paths and religions, but I hope that they do the same thing that you do, that like if it's something they don't understand or they don't know, that they're like, oh, well, I should go look that up, or like, let's see what exactly that's about, or kind of appreciate those other religions and other paths out there, rather than just be like, oh, well, that was just in the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one thing that just we just have to applaud the show for is like, I think all of us growing up with Charmed and Hocus Pocus and Practical Magic, like there are some in The Craft, like there are some exhausting, totally not feminist themes at all in the majority of how media portrays witches. And Sabrina is doing a pretty good job. Pretty damn good job.
Yeah, sure.
And it's incredibly refreshing. It's incredibly refreshing to see something that is accurate in a lot of ways, that is inclusive in a lot of ways, that's progressive, and a lot of witches could say, yeah, I can get behind that.
Yeah. I think as a whole, for me, I love Sabrina. Like, I know we're like sitting here nitpicking, but that's what this show is.
Yeah.
So,
sure.
But as a whole, like, I like it.
Me too.
Me
too. Rewatching it has been great.
Yeah.
I'm excited to go back and watch season 1 because, I think...
It's good. It's really good.
I binged it and loved it. And, I started watching season 2 to catch up in preparation for the show. So, like, I had already had, like, an examination type of lens going on. Mm-hmm. So I think going back and watching it and just being like, let's enjoy this. Yeah. Because I loved season 1 and the holiday special. So, it's a good, like... Yeah, something fun. It tries its best, and it's pretty good.
And it's ezy for us to pick and prod at shit when we're not writing.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, but we could. Anybody watching?
Yes, please.
So I think we should like thumbs up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Two thumbs up.
I only have 2. I'd give a little more.
I like it. Yeah.
That's good.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, until next time, we'll see you.
Yeah. I would play the Sabrina music, but I think I'd get a copyright strike.
Probably.
We'll see what I can do.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Oh wait, but also thank you for coming.
Oh yes, thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun. Yes, perfect.
It was a pleasure.
And we'll put your links to your podcast and info below so that everyone can go check it out.
Happy solstice, everybody.
Yeah.
Happy solstice.
Enjoy the sun.
Yeah.
Bye.